like to welcome everyone to the Council of Federation.
Canada's premiers are meeting in Ottawa today ahead of a larger meeting with the Prime Minister tomorrow. The premiers are realigning as Team Canada just as the Trump administration ramps up its threats in the lead up to CUSMA renegotiations later this year.
In my investment career, I've seen what happens when a technocrat tries to pivot and become a politician. It never really works out well. So I would just encourage Prime Minister Carney to do what he thinks is best for the Canadian people, not his own virtue signaling.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston joins me now. Premier, it's good to see you. Welcome to the studio.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I want to quickly start with your reaction on the latest out of the United States. The Prime Minister gave a speech last week, and now we've seen some pretty inflammatory comments from the White House and the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, essentially saying Mark Carney's picking a fight and it's going to cost Canada. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. There's lots of moving parts to this. I think, the relationship is so deep and so long. I'm sure we'll get through it, and I have great faith in the Prime Minister and the team that Canada has representing us there. So obviously there's some posturing coming out of the United States and probably a bit out of Canada too, but we have some important negotiations, and I believe we'll get to where we need to get.
What are you hoping to hear from the Prime Minister on that front? Because there's the multiple tracks happening, the international investment and trade diversification in the U.S. and the domestic development. What do you want to hear in the U.S.?
Yeah, just a kind of an update, but certainly, just a real kind of frank assessment of the lines of communication that are happening, because obviously sometimes people kind of grab some headlines with things, but behind the scenes, there's real discussions that are happening, and I'm interested to get a real kind of frank assessment of what's happening with the real discussions that are happening, and the headlines will be the headlines.
Well, what is your sense of that? Because it is very difficult to get a clear sense of where things are, because the public noise is so loud.
Yeah.
It overshadows everything, and there is no actual formal process happening at this point at a granular level, it seems. So what is your sense of where things are actually going?
You know what, I have to believe that there's still discussions happening. I certainly, kind of on both sides of any type of negotiation, whether it's business or, country to country, whatever it is, there's always, you always have a few characters in the game that are meant to say inflammatory things to try to advance positions. That's certainly happening for sure, especially from the United States. But I do believe that at the level where they're actually trying to make progress, that I'm hopeful that there is progress. We need it as a country too.
Right. So look, there's a unity of purpose, it seems, at the First Minister's table and at the Premier's table on dealing with the United States. Broad alignment there. There have been a couple of things that have flared up, sort of Ontario being upset with the China deal, though the pizza visit seems to have calmed things down a little bit with Doug Ford. We'll see. And there is, the issue around the conflict of the pipeline between Alberta and British Columbia. What are your thoughts on where the mood is at the Premier's table right now with these internal challenges?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a big, diverse country, so we all accept that everybody's trying to govern in their region and they have issues before them. So, but for me, some of these things are pretty critical, like certainly on the pipeline thing. We see a couple sides developing there, but I'm not really on either side of that. I'm just on one side, and that's Team Canada, and that pipeline has to happen for our country, so I'm hopeful that we can move forward on that. And the other issues, I mean, there are certain things that are more important to different parts of the country. Certainly for us, seafood's really important. So when we see a deal that helps seafood, that's good for us. But we understand that there are other ramifications, and we just need to be open with each other about where we're trying to go as a country. But on balance, I'm really pleased with what the Prime Minister is doing. He is going out there and doing what he should be doing. Selling Canada, promoting Canada, in a way that is trying to attract investment capital to our country, which opens the door for premiers to advance their own opportunities. And that's really what we need, because we have to create jobs and get people working in this country. And that seems to be the focus of the Prime Minister. It's certainly my focus in Nova Scotia. It's why I became the Energy Minister as well, because that's where our opportunities are. So, but we, along the way, there's, different things matter to different regions of the country, because it's a big country, but that's our strength more than anything.
Okay, I just want to back up there. You say you're not on either side of the pipeline argument, but then you say the pipeline has to happen. I'm not saying you're choosing Daniel Smith over David Eby, but you're fully behind a bitumen pipeline to the coast, because the environmental pushback there, the First Nations pushback there. How do you get over those or around those or satisfy those?
It's really important. Those are what I would say problems to solve. But we have to be committed to solving them. There's pipelines being built. They can be built safely and sustainably, and we just need to work through that. But that pipeline is important. I've always been in favor of a pipeline even to the East Coast with the Energy East. But so these are things that we can do as a country. there are challenges for sure. It's not meant to be easy, but we have to have the courage to work through those challenges and say these things have to happen. And for our country right now, developing our natural resources, it has to happen. It just has to happen. And we certainly know that's the case in Nova Scotia. That's why we're promoting the offshore wind, but also onshore gas, offshore oil and gas, mining opportunities. These are all opportunities. They're things that can be done safely and done sustainably, but we just have to commit ourselves to doing them.
What should the Prime Minister do then to make this happen? Because it may come down to the exercising of federal power. If you can't get alignment from all the partners along the route, what would you like to see Mark Carney do here?
Well, I think he's the first thing he's going to do is try to get everyone in the room together. I think that's an important step, and really understand the different perspectives and what people see as the challenges and try to work through them. But at the end of the day, I think the elected leadership of this country, including the premiers, we're going to have to make some decisions. But we all care. We're Canadian. I'm Nova Scotian. I care about the air and the earth and the water. I care about all those things. But we just can't say no for the sake of saying no. We have to have the courage to move forward. And that's what we're trying to do in Nova Scotia. And I'm pleased that I believe that our federal government is trying to do the same thing.
The deal with China to remove some tariffs and trade irritants, I know this helps seafood, lobster in particular, for Nova Scotia would really be helped out there. But they're time limited. They're not necessarily permanent. They'll be reviewed at the end of the year. This is one of the criticisms of this, though I don't know if there's a perfect deal with China or not. What are your thoughts on the temporary nature of the tariff relief, and how hopeful are you that it could be something that never comes back?
It's a step along the way. And I think there will be many steps that are required in these journeys. We're trying to get back to the place where we were, where we had significant trade for us, lobster, crab, all kinds of seafood, and others as well. But we're trying to get back to that place. So it's a step in that direction. And as long as directionally we're moving in the right direction, then that's a good thing. So I'm pleased with that. But these are complicated issues for sure. There are lots of moving parts to these. But as I said, it's a step on the journey, and we need to be on the journey.
So the Prime Minister, he's trying to navigate the Canada-U.S. issue and then find other markets and trade diversification as a hedge against the reliance on the U.S., while also doing the major projects and the trade opening internally as part of that in concert with the premiers. The pushback against the speech in Davos as poking the United States, was that a mistake for Mark Carney, or was it the right thing to do? Because you have seen other countries align with him on this, and there does seem to be some sort of a convergence of middle powers in the wake of it. How do you view it?
I was impressed by the speech, and I was proud of the speech. And I think some of the things that are happening and some of the things we're seeing said as a result of that are proving that the speech was necessary, to be honest. But there, I say my job is often whack-a-mole. Like you try to push something down and it pops up somewhere else. And certainly the Prime Minister's job is that times. So we understand that. But I think the points he made in Davos were absolutely true, and they needed to be said. But we can acknowledge the reality and still work towards a better place. And that's what we're trying to do as a country.
Right, so as Premier and Energy Minister of Nova Scotia, and there's the champion of the big wind project that has been put on the table and maybe moving through the major projects process. The U.S. is a big source of capital and potential for that. Where does that project lie right now in terms of getting the proponents and the money that you need to make it move to the next step? Yeah,
so the next step for that project, we can produce incredible amounts of offshore, the wind speeds, it blows a lot, the water, all the things that we know are really, really valuable and important assets. We can generate a lot of wind. We can generate 40, 50, 60 megawatts, and just for order of magnitude, Nova Scotia uses about 2. So if you're going to produce 40, 50, 60, and you only use 2, you have to have a path to the market for the rest of it where you can sell it. So that's the stage now. We'll do the market assessment and make sure that that cable, this is not a pipeline, it's a cable that would move that energy to markets, can be built effectively. So I think the next step on that is you'll see that market feasibility assessment. There are incredible markets. A lot of them are in New England, but they're also in Quebec and Ontario and New Brunswick and Nova Scotia and other parts of Canada as well. So we're very confident, but I think we just closed the kind of expressions of interest. The regulator, the offshore, our board did that, but they've told me that the interest that they had from the market and the people who will actually write the checks to build the towers and do the generation, the interest was like through the roof. This is the I would say it is but it's certainly one of the most attractive offshore wind projects in the world. And it's a big world, as we know. So there's a big opportunity there, but there's also a big opportunity in Nova Scotia for onshore gas, which we've come up with a drilling incentive program for that, and also in onshore and our offshore oil and gas too. Huge opportunities for Nova Scotian energy.
Look,
That's why I became the energy minister.
Look, another issue that came up today, the new progressive conservative premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, Tony Wakeham, said they're not going to participate in the gun buyback program the federal government's trying to do. What about Nova Scotia? Because a lot of provinces are saying no way.
Well, listen, this program I think will be ineffective. I think we saw that actually in the one example that came out. But I just don't think criminals are going to line up to get rid of their guns, which is the intent of it, to make our streets safer. So I'm not a favor of the program as it is. I don't really think it's going to work, but I am in favor of trying to get safer streets, and there's lots that we can do there too.
So will you participate in the buyback and help facilitate it, have provincial police, and the municipal police participate in the recovery of weapons, or are you going to stay out of it as other premiers are?
I think we're staying out of that one. I think there's lots of things police officers can be doing and law enforcement can be doing. We're seeing that, and I'd rather them focus on that.
Okay, one last question. Are you going to go to the convention in Calgary where Mr. Poilievre's leadership is up for review? I know it's been a bit of a fraught relationship between the PCs of Nova Scotia and the federal Conservatives.
I won't be at the convention. I've got a lot to do in Nova Scotia, so we'll finish up in Ottawa and head back home and get to work.
Okay. Premier Tim Houston, good to see you today. Thanks for coming in.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.